The night was split by a scream so sharp it rattled the windows, and Rachel shot upright in bed, heart pounding in her chest like a hammer on steel. She whispered, "Who's there?" But only silence pressed against her ears. Her backyard seemed alive with whispers, the shed crouching like a beast in the moonlight. The lock she had fastened yesterday hung twisted, broken again, as if some unseen hand had torn it apart. The wind carried a sour stench that made her stomach turn, a smell like rust and wet earth. Rachel said, "This isn't real. It can't be real." Yet her gut told her otherwise, a crawling certainty that something had been hiding there all along, feeding on her unspoken fear. The shadows around the shed shifted, unnatural in their movements, stretching long fingers across the yard. Rachel clutched her blanket, but it felt like paper against a rising storm of dread. A whisper floated from the shed, faint yet deliberate, "Rachel." Rachel tried to calm her racing pulse, convincing herself it was nothing but wind. Yet the whisper carried weight, pressing against her skull like a heavy hand. She muttered, "No one's there, no one." Still, her body refused to believe. Her father's old warnings rang in her ears, warnings about things that live in dark places. The air grew heavy, and her window fogged as though someone breathed on it from the outside. Her throat tightened as she stepped back from the glass. A sudden bang echoed from the shed, sharp and violent. Rachel nearly stumbled, gripping the nightstand for balance. She whispered to herself, "It's just the lock, just the wind." The excuses rang hollow. Fear swelled inside her chest like a second heartbeat. The night refused to quiet. Every sound carried sharp edges, amplified by her imagination. She thought of calling someone, but who would believe her? She could almost hear Eric saying, "It's just raccoons, Rachel." But no animal whispered her name. She pressed her palm flat to her chest, heart hammering so violently she feared it would tear free. The air seemed colder now, seeping into her skin. The shed groaned again, wood straining, nails popping like brittle bones. Rachel said, "Stop it. Please stop." Her words dissolved into the heavy silence. Somewhere in the dark, something shuffled closer. Rachel forced herself to move, each step away from the window like wading through thick water. She opened her closet, searching for the flashlight she hadn't used in years. Her fingers brushed cold metal, and she yanked it out, hands shaking. She clicked it on, but the weak beam barely cut through the dark. Her reflection stared back from the mirror on the closet door, pale and hollow-eyed, a stranger. The whisper came again, softer but clearer, "Rachel." Her knees buckled, and she gripped the closet frame. Fear had teeth now, biting deep, leaving her breathless. She whispered, "Why me?" The light in Rachel's hand flickered, as though straining against something unseen. She stumbled toward the window again, her breath ragged. The shed door slammed shut, shaking the ground with unnatural force. Her heart lurched, and she nearly dropped the flashlight. Then silence, thick, absolute silence that made her ears ring. Rachel whispered, "What do you want from me?" But her words were swallowed by the dark. For a heartbeat, she thought she saw movement at the edge of the shed. Something tall, something waiting. Her stomach twisted, and tears burned her eyes. She shut the curtains, but even that felt useless. Rachel lay awake, her flashlight clutched tight, unable to ignore the weight of silence pressing down on the house. Every creak of wood, every rustle outside made her flinch. She thought of calling Eric, the one person who never laughed when she spoke of shadows. But it was past midnight, and she dreaded the tone of his voice when he told her again that she needed sleep, not ghost stories. Her father's voice returned to her memory, deep and uneasy, warning that old things hide in forgotten corners. Rachel whispered, "I am not crazy." Her eyes flicked back to the shed, its outline a black mass in the yard. Something about its darkness felt thicker than night itself, like it was swallowing light whole. Her stomach churned with dread, yet curiosity dug its claws into her mind. She knew she would not sleep again until she checked the shed herself. Rachel pushed herself up and walked into the kitchen, every step creaking as though the house itself was warning her to stop. She poured water into a glass, but her hands shook so badly the liquid sloshed onto the counter. The clock above the fridge read 2:47 a.m., and the ticking sounded louder than her heartbeat. She muttered, "Just water. Just calm down." Yet the reflection in the glass showed her face pale, drawn tight, like she hadn't slept in years. Outside, the shed seemed even closer, leaning toward the house like it was listening. Rachel pressed her forehead to the cool surface of the glass door that led to the backyard. The night pressed back, thick and endless. Something shifted in the grass. She whispered, "I can't do this." But her feet refused to move away. Her phone buzzed on the counter, startling her so hard she nearly dropped the glass. It was Eric, a message lighting the screen. She unlocked it with fumbling fingers. His text read, "Couldn't sleep. You okay?" Rachel's breath caught. She typed quickly, "Something's wrong with the shed again. The lock's broken." She stared at the blinking cursor, waiting. The reply came fast, "It's probably nothing. Don't let it get to you." Rachel scowled, whispering, "You never listen." But then another message appeared, "Do not go outside." She froze, rereading it. The words carried urgency that knotted her stomach. Eric had always brushed things aside, but now his warning carried the sharpness of real fear. She glanced back at the shed, its shadows shifting like restless things in the dark. Rachel locked the kitchen door and stepped back, clutching the phone against her chest. The words "do not go outside" echoed in her head like a chant. Yet her gaze kept sliding toward the window where the shed crouched like a waiting predator. She thought of her father again, his stern warnings about doors that should never be opened. Her hands shook as she whispered, "I shouldn't even look." But still, she edged closer to the window. The glass fogged faintly as though something breathed against it. She reached out with trembling fingers and wiped the condensation. For a moment, the reflection of her own pale face stared back. Then, a second reflection blinked behind her. Rachel gasped and stumbled back into the kitchen table, sending the glass crashing to the floor. Rachel spun around, her breath sharp and ragged, but the kitchen stood empty. The second reflection was gone. She gripped the edge of the counter until her fingers ached. The glass shards on the floor glinted in the moonlight streaming through the window. She whispered, "It's not real," but the hollow sound of her voice betrayed her. The shed door creaked again, louder now, as if mocking her. The sound carried through the night, sinking deep into her bones. Rachel closed her eyes and fought the trembling in her body. Eric's words burned in her thoughts. "Do not go outside." But part of her felt it was already too late. The house no longer felt safe. The walls seemed too thin, the shadows too deep, the shed too close. Something was waiting for her, and it knew her name. Rachel couldn't take her eyes off the shed, its black outline thrumming with menace in the night. The silence felt heavy, unnatural, as if waiting for her to breathe too loudly. She whispered, "I'm stronger than this," but her hands shook as she clutched the flashlight tighter. The shadows stretching across the yard seemed alive, twisting in directions the moonlight could not explain. She felt like prey, trapped in a house that no longer sheltered her. The whisper came again, not from outside this time but from somewhere inside the walls. Her skin prickled, and she spun in circles, searching for the source. "No," Rachel said, "you don't get to come in here." Yet, deep down, she knew the shed was only the beginning. Whatever lurked inside it was already reaching for her, pulling at her thoughts, feeding on her fear. She forced herself to move toward the back door, her bare feet cold on the kitchen tiles. Every step carried the weight of something final, as though she was crossing a threshold she could never return from. The flashlight beam flickered weakly as she aimed it through the glass, but the dark seemed to swallow it whole. Her breath fogged the surface again, and she muttered, "Just look, just prove it's empty." But when she leaned closer, she saw marks in the dirt near the shed, long drag lines like something had been pulled inside. Her stomach lurched, and she stumbled back, nearly slipping on the wet tile. Rachel whispered, No animal makes marks like that. The silence that followed was so deep it roared in her ears, demanding she open the door. Rachel's phone buzzed again in her hand. She nearly dropped it before seeing another message from Eric. "Stay inside. Promise me." She typed, "I think something's in there." Her thumb hovered over send, but before she pressed it, the screen dimmed, then went black. Her reflection stared back in the glass, pale and trembling. The battery had been full. She whispered, "That's not possible." The flashlight flickered in her other hand, then steadied. Her nerves felt stretched thin, her thoughts tangled in disbelief. A faint scratching echoed from the back door, slow and deliberate, like nails dragging against the wood. Rachel backed away, shaking her head. "No, no, no, no," she said. The scratching stopped, leaving silence so absolute it pressed into her chest like stone. Rachel tried to breathe, but the air felt thin. She forced herself toward the hallway, her legs moving like they didn't belong to her. A sudden chill swept across the room, rattling picture frames on the wall. One frame fell, glass shattering loud in the silence. She gasped and froze, her flashlight beam landing on the photo that had fallen. It was of her and her younger sister, smiling in the backyard years ago, the shed clearly visible behind them. A sob rose in her throat. Her sister's face looked blurred in the photo now, as if smeared away by unseen hands. Rachel whispered, "This isn't real. It can't change the past." Yet the longer she stared, the clearer the smear grew, like the photo itself was alive. Something in the house shifted, a weight settling upstairs. The sound upstairs grew louder, a dragging shuffle across the floorboards. Rachel's body stiffened, her pulse roaring in her ears. She whispered, "I'm alone. I live alone," as if repeating it could change the truth. Her legs moved on their own, step by step, toward the staircase. Each creak of wood echoed like a warning. The flashlight beam wavered across the steps, painting the banister in trembling light. She stopped halfway, straining to hear. The dragging sound ceased, replaced by a soft sobbing, faint but unmistakable. Her breath caught. "No," she whispered. It was a child's cry, broken and hopeless, seeping through the walls. Tears burned in her eyes. Her sister's blurred face from the photo returned to her mind, and her voice trembled. "Please don't be you." Rachel froze on the stairs as the sobbing faded into silence, replaced by a faint knock at the front door. Her pulse leapt, and for a long moment she couldn't move. The knock came again, slow and deliberate. She crept down the stairs, clutching the weak flashlight. Fear warred with curiosity, every step grinding against her nerves. She whispered, "Eric?" But no answer came. The third knock rattled the glass in the door, too calm to be desperate, too heavy to be normal. She pressed her face to the side window and saw a man in the shadows, his posture still, his eyes fixed on the shed. Her breath caught when he finally spoke through the door in a low, steady tone. "Rachel, I know what's in there, and I know it knows you." Rachel's hand hovered over the lock. Every instinct screamed not to open the door, but his voice carried a strange gravity, a calmness that anchored her fear. She asked softly, "Who are you?" The man replied, "Someone who's seen it before." His words chilled her, yet she unlatched the chain with shaking fingers. The door creaked open just a crack, revealing a man with a weathered face, salt and pepper hair, and tired eyes. He didn't look at her, only at the shed. "It's been feeding too long," he murmured. Rachel stepped back, her throat tight. "Feeding on what?" she asked. His eyes finally met hers, sharp and weary. "On you," he said. Rachel staggered back, shaking her head. "That's insane," she said, but the words lacked conviction. The man stepped into the house uninvited, his presence unsettling yet steady. He moved like someone who had done this before, his eyes scanning corners as if expecting something to strike. "You felt it, haven't you?" he asked. Rachel swallowed hard. She wanted to deny it, but the whisper of her name still crawled in her ears. The man crouched near the shattered photo frame in the hallway, lifting the blurred image of her sister. His face darkened. "It always starts with someone lost," he said. Rachel's knees weakened, her voice trembling. "What do you mean, lost?" He looked at her with grim certainty. "Your sister's not gone. Not completely." Rachel's throat tightened, as if her body already knew the truth her mind rejected. "No," she whispered. "She's dead. She's been dead for years." The man shook his head, his tone quiet but heavy. "Not dead. Taken." The words sank into Rachel like ice. He pointed toward the shed with a trembling finger. "That's where it keeps them. The ones it feeds on. Pieces of them stay behind, trapped in its hunger." Rachel's heart pounded so violently she felt sick. She pressed her hands against her ears as if she could block his words. But the sobbing sound upstairs returned, faint and fragile. Rachel whispered, "It sounds like her." Her voice cracked, and tears slid down her face. The man's silence was answer enough. The man placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder, his grip firm. "Listen to me," he said. "The longer you ignore it, the stronger it grows. It doesn't want you dead. It wants you broken." Rachel's chest heaved, her breath shallow. "Why me?" she whispered, her voice desperate. His eyes softened for the first time. "Because it knows your bloodline. It's been here before you, before your father, before all of us." Rachel's knees nearly gave way as she clutched the flashlight like a lifeline. The house seemed to groan around them, as though the entity was listening. A sharp crack echoed from the shed, the sound of wood splitting. The man said grimly, "It's awake now, and it won't wait much longer." The house groaned again, and Rachel felt as if the walls themselves were bowing inward. She clutched her flashlight tighter, her voice sharp. "You said my sister isn't gone. What did you mean?" The man's eyes lingered on the stairs, his face pale. "It keeps them," he said. Rachel shook her head violently. "I buried her. I saw her casket lowered." The man's voice lowered to a whisper. "You buried what it left behind." The air turned heavier, and Rachel staggered under its weight. A child's sob echoed again from above, thin and broken, cutting through her like glass. Rachel's body trembled as she whispered, "Emily." The sound of her sister's name on her lips made her chest collapse with grief, her knees nearly giving way as shadows thickened at the edge of the stairs. Rachel forced herself to climb the stairs, each step groaning under her weight as though resisting her. The man stayed at the bottom, his face a mask of regret. The flashlight beam wavered across peeling wallpaper and old picture frames, stopping when it caught a figure at the top. Rachel froze. A girl stood there, pale and trembling, no older than 12. Her nightgown was torn and dirty, her hair tangled around her thin face. Rachel's throat closed as recognition tore into her chest. "Emily," she whispered, tears spilling over. The girl's lips parted, but no words came. Only a soft, broken sob. Rachel reached a trembling hand upward, but her stomach twisted when she saw the girl's eyes, hollow, black as tar. Rachel staggered back a step, her hand clutching the banister until her knuckles whitened. "No," she whispered. "This isn't real. You're dead." Emily tilted her head, her face twitching like a puppet half-controlled. Her lips moved at last, her voice thin and warped. "Rachel." The sound of her name from her sister's mouth broke something deep inside her. The man's voice floated up from below, firm but grim. "That's not her anymore. It's only a piece." Rachel shook her head furiously. "Don't you dare say that." Emily stretched her hand toward Rachel, her fingers pale and trembling. "Help me," she whispered. The plea cut through Rachel's heart like a blade, and she took another step upward despite the terror clawing at her lungs. Rachel reached the top step, her breath shallow, the flashlight beam trembling wildly. Emily stood just feet away, her body swaying as though held up by invisible strings. Rachel whispered, "I'll get you out." Emily's lips parted, her whisper breaking into the silence. "It hurts." Rachel stepped closer, her hand shaking as she tried to touch her. But when her fingers brushed Emily's arm, the skin felt cold and soft, like damp earth. Rachel recoiled with a gasp, stumbling back. Emily's hollow eyes filled with sudden rage, and a scream tore from her throat, high and unnatural, rattling the walls. Rachel fell to her knees, covering her ears. The man shouted from below, "It's not her, it's the thing wearing her voice." The screams stopped abruptly, leaving the house in suffocating silence. Emily's figure flickered like a broken projection, her form twisting, then snapping back into place. Rachel sobbed, clutching her chest. The man climbed a few steps, his voice urgent. "It wants you to follow her. If you do, it wins." Rachel shook her head, her tears falling fast. "She's my sister. I can't just leave her." Emily's face softened suddenly, her voice small again. "Rachel, please." The contradiction shattered her. Her heart told her it was Emily, but her gut screamed it was something else. The man's voice rose, sharp and desperate. "If you touch her again, you won't come back." Rachel looked between him and the girl she once loved, torn apart by fear and grief, the shed's hunger pulling her toward ruin. Rachel staggered down the stairs, her body trembling with every breath. The mysterious ally caught her arm, his eyes hard. "If you follow it now, you're lost." She wrenched free, her voice raw. "She's my sister. I have to know if any part of her is still there." His face twisted with pain, but he nodded slowly. "Then you face it where it lives, in the shed." The word alone made Rachel's stomach clench. The house seemed smaller, pressing inward, forcing her to the back door. The lock clicked with a sound too loud in the silence. Outside, the shed loomed like a grave. The mist clung to the grass, curling toward her feet. Rachel whispered, "Emily, wait for me," before stepping into the cold. The air outside felt thick, heavy, like every breath dragged her deeper into a grave. Rachel walked slowly across the grass, her bare feet wet with dew. The shed door gaped wider now, the wood groaning in protest as if alive. The ally followed a few steps behind, his voice hushed. "Do not let it trick you. It wears what you love most." Rachel's chest tightened. The shadows inside shifted, rolling like liquid darkness, curling into shapes that almost resembled faces. She clutched the flashlight tighter, its beam cutting only a few feet before the black swallowed it whole. Her lips quivered as she whispered, "Emily." A faint laugh drifted from inside the shed, high-pitched and broken, echoing like a child's, but carrying something monstrous beneath it. Rachel stepped into the doorway, her pulse thundering so loud it drowned the night. The shed smelled of rot and damp earth, a graveyard of forgotten things. Her flashlight beam swept across broken tools, rusted shelves, and claw-like scratches along the walls. Something moved in the corner, a shape shifting in and out of the shadows. "Emily," Rachel whispered, her voice barely audible. The figure straightened, stepping into the weak light. It was her sister, or something wearing her skin. Her face flickered between innocence and horror, eyes black and endless. "Help me," the thing whispered, its voice cracking. Rachel's knees buckled, tears stinging her eyes. The ally hissed from behind, "Don't look at it, it wants you to believe." But Rachel couldn't turn away. The air inside thickened, pressing Rachel's lungs like stone. Emily's form twitched, her limbs jerking at odd angles as the thing inside her pulled the strings. Her voice shifted between sobs and guttural growls. "You left me," she wailed, before her face contorted into something monstrous. Rachel sobbed, "No, I didn't. I never stopped looking for you." The shed walls rattled as shadows stretched, clawing toward her. The ally shouted, "It feeds on guilt. Don't give it what it wants." But Rachel could barely hear him through the pounding of her heart. Emily's hand reached out, long fingers stretching too far, bones cracking as they grew. Rachel raised the flashlight like a shield, its beam trembling but refusing to break. The flashlight flickered, sputtering in her grip as the shadows swallowed more of the shed. Emily's face softened again, her eyes suddenly wet with tears instead of black voids. "Rachel, Please, she cried, her small voice breaking. Rachel's chest heaved, torn apart by grief. The ally shouted, "It's a lie. Don't touch her." Rachel's hand trembled inches from Emily's, the air between them vibrating with unbearable tension. Her tears blurred her vision, her body screaming to save her sister while her mind screamed to run. Emily's voice twisted again, dropping into a deep growl. "You're already mine." The shed door slammed shut behind them, plunging the room into choking darkness. Rachel screamed, her voice cracking as the shadows surged, consuming everything. The shed's darkness swallowed Rachel whole, her flashlight sputtering before dying in her hand. She screamed, the sound bouncing back at her, twisted into something alien. Emily's voice drifted from the black, soft and pleading. "Don't leave me again." Rachel's chest heaved, her hand clawing at empty air. The mysterious ally slammed his fists against the outside door, shouting, "Fight it, Rachel!" Shadows coiled tighter, pulling her down, cold tendrils wrapping her wrists and ankles. Rachel cried out, "I won't let you take her." Her voice cracked as she fought against the pull. For an instant she saw Emily's face inches away, her hollow eyes glistening with sorrow. "Please," Emily whispered, and Rachel's heart shattered. Rachel clawed at the dirt floor, her nails breaking, but the shadows only tightened their grip. The alley's voice cracked through the walls. "It's not her. It's feeding on you both." Rachel screamed back, her voice ragged. "She's still in there." The shadows writhed, growing taller, forming a grotesque shape above her. Its body was made of twisting limbs and screaming mouths, all shifting in and out of form. Emily's voice came from its core, distorted but still recognizable. "Help me, Rachel." Tears blurred Rachel's vision, but she forced herself upright against the pull, her body trembling. "Then take me instead," she whispered. For a heartbeat, the shadows froze. Then they surged, slamming into her chest, driving her backward against the rotting wall. The impact knocked the breath from Rachel's lungs, leaving her gasping. The walls of the shed groaned as if the structure itself were alive, every board vibrating with the entity's hunger. The Allah's shouts blurred into muffled echoes. Rachel pressed her palm to her chest, feeling the shadows burrow into her skin like icy needles. Her body convulsed as the entity's whispers poured into her head, endless voices chanting her name. She screamed, "Stop!" but the sound broke apart in the darkness. Emily's form flickered in front of her, reaching out with shaking hands. "Save me," she begged, her voice both hers and not hers. Rachel reached forward, her tears falling into the dirt, her hand trembling as it hovered just above Emily's. Rachel's hand touched Emily's, and for an instant warmth flooded through her, real and alive. Emily's black eyes softened, turning brown again, tears spilling down her cheeks. Rachel sobbed, "I've got you." But then the shadows shrieked, the monstrous shape convulsing, its many mouths screaming in rage. The warmth in Rachel's chest turned to fire, searing through her veins. Emily's face flickered wildly, torn between innocence and the void. "You shouldn't have come," she whispered, her voice breaking into static. Rachel screamed as the shadows ripped outward, slamming both sisters to the floor. The shed wall split, boards cracking as darkness burst outward, consuming everything in its path. The ally outside fell to his knees as the shed shook violently, glowing with a sickly red light. When the light faded, the night was silent again. The shed stood half-collapsed, its door hanging loose. The ally staggered inside, his breath sharp. The dirt floor was empty. No Rachel. No Emily. Only the dead flashlight lay cracked in the corner. The air felt heavy, thick with finality, yet wrong. A whisper floated through the silence, soft and familiar. "Rachel." It carried from the shadows deeper within the ruin, faint but deliberate. The owl's face crumpled with grief as he backed away. The shed's broken boards creaked, shifting like they were breathing. The night returned to stillness, but it was not peace. Something remained inside, waiting. The whisper came once more, lower this time, filled with hunger. "Rachel."